briefly, I was introduced to Harlan 2 years ago when my son was gifted his book, The Naked Roommate, for his high school graduation. And in turn, we found a lot of fun just based on his Instagram. His Instagram site, and Spencer would call me from college and be like, "Oh my God, did you see what Harlan posted?" It's like, "Oh my God, I found sexual elements in this." And so the two of us would go back and forth. And since then, my other son has found a lot of joy in his Instagram posts as well. So he spoke to the seniors today as well as the 8th graders, and I think it went pretty well based on my understanding. And so he's here tonight. I hope you join him.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm excited to have the chance to be in your corner, to visit with you, to get to know you. How many of you are parents of seniors? Curious to know. A lot of seniors. Congratulations. I'm one too. I'm a parent of a senior, so we're in it. My wife is in it too, and sometimes she just cries. It just hits her, and And I've been in this position before, talking to people, and they'll get sad and they'll feel their emotions, and I'll be very respectful and reflect what they're feeling. And now I'm in it. Like, it's weird. It's so weird because when I feel it, and I'm very excited for Eli, and I know he's going to be great. And the way that I describe it is he's going to have an experience. He's going to go somewhere, and we know where he's going, but he's going to go there, and he's a gymnast. So he's going to do gymnastics, and he's going to have an experience. And some of them are going to be great, and some of them are not going to be great. And he'll get through it. And if he likes it there, he'll stay there. If not, he'll go somewhere else. And he'll be great wherever he goes and whatever he does. And he'll have difficult moments and great moments. But I think that he's an amazing person, and he's going to come out being so unbelievably successful. And that's his story. Like, that's his story. And I think that's all of our kids' stories. Like that, why can't it be all of our kids' stories? And I think we put so much time and energy into worrying, but basically, whether they're seniors, then any junior families here? Juniors? Oh, okay, so they're all kind of, this is the year that makes or breaks your kid. This is it. This is the fork in the road. Obviously, I'm just being silly. No, it's just what it is, and they're going to be great no matter what. I know that this community really prides itself on having a lot of successful students and great outcomes. I know your school has great outcomes, but I think any outcome is a great outcome. And I really believe this. I mean, I have been involved in this, in the whole college game for so long that it really is a business. I see the business of it. And I see that it's a student who goes in there and really has a want. And today, I really worked hard to help students to be free to want. Like, what do they want? Because so much of their life has been doing what we want them to do, and what the teachers want them to do, and what the colleges want them to do, and what all these people want them to do. And a lot of them haven't had a lot of time to really flex their want muscle. And if they're lucky enough to figure out something they want to do, they can grab onto it and do it for as long as they still want to do it, which is safe and wonderful for us. But a lot of times they change their mind, or they're afraid to change their mind, because if they change their mind, then they don't know what they want. And it's so scary to not know what to want when you're not great at wanting, because that's the cycle. So when I talk to the 8th graders, and are there any 8th grade parents here? So, oh wow, this is great, 8th grade and college. I think some of you, if you're both, if you're 8th grade and college, 2 hands, okay. You got a lot going on, right? That's great. And with the 8th graders, it was really about just starting to get them to be free to want, to practice wanting and to play around with rejection. I'm obsessed with rejection. I don't love getting rejected, but I'm so great at getting rejected. It is my gift. I get rejected every single day. I got 3 kids. They reject me. I'm married. My wife rejects me. You'd think getting married would end the rejection. But now it's just you have to live with the rejection. There's nowhere to go. But it's great. I get it. And I have all these strategies to help me to work through the rejection, because if you are okay with rejection, I really feel like you're a superhero. Like, if you're okay with rejection and you don't reject yourself, and when other people reject you, you can process and ask the right questions. Well, then rejection becomes data. It becomes interesting, as opposed to it being personal and emotional and something that we trip over. And I'm sure even within the Bronxville community, there are situations where someone will look at someone sideways, or someone won't respond a certain way, and it doesn't stop. Like, it doesn't stop. And how do we work through that? So I talk about college and change. I also talk a lot about navigating new situations. But the college piece has been interesting because studying it for so many years, you see so many patterns. You know, I see so many trends. And connecting those dots has helped me to put together a framework that I can share with you. And it's not just about college, it's really about parenting and how to be the best partner. And I'll start by saying you're all the best partners. Like, you're amazing, you're the best parents, you're here. You know, the fact that you're here shows that you care. And for those who are watching the recording, the fact that you're watching this shows that you care. Even if you fast forward certain parts, you're busy and you care. You can't really fast forward anything when you're live here. But I know you care, and you're amazing, and your kids are amazing. And I'm so grateful to just tell you how amazing you are and to spend the next hour to reinforce this. So, sophomore parents. Sophomores? We have any sophomore families here? It's great. Okay, that's a good year. Sophomore year is a good year. I like that. You're consoling her. Why are you consoling this woman as a sophomore? Oh, you have three? You have four. Oh, you have a fourth grader too? I wasn't going to go that low, but I will. Actually, so any freshmen? Family? Okay, great. And how was freshman year? Was it a good year for kids? Good year? Good. And then 8th graders, any 8th grade? Middle school? How about I'll clump middle school together. Middle school? Okay, right, we talked about that. And any grade school? Grade school? We got a little grade school here? Great. Is there anyone expecting? No, this could be an exciting moment to share. Okay, I gave you that chance. Right. That's great. Well, wherever you are in your parenting, I think that this will be really helpful. And I'm excited that I can be here to support you. Let's see if this works. Sometimes it works. I think what happened is, oh, look at that. It does work. I thought it was about a ghost, because I asked if there are ghosts here. And I shouldn't mess with the ghosts, because I think that's what happened with my technology, maybe. I guess they said there are ghosts here. There are a couple ghosts. There's a friendly ghost, a woman ghost, and then another ghost. I guess you know about the ghosts? Oh, you do know the ghosts. Right. Two ghosts. I don't want to mess with the ghosts. With all respect, ghosts. I'm so grateful to be in your home and coexist with you. All right. Because my music got all weird after I did some ghost hunting. Anyway, all right. So I'm always curious to know what state of mind you're in when you're coming here. I should have done this before I started, but just with a show of fingers, I'm curious. If you can just hold up your hands, 2 hands, if you're able. 10, best day ever. Maybe, 10. You know how to hold up your hands. 7, and then, however, so how are you? Just so I can look around. I want to look around the room. I'd like to just see, and you can look around at each other. It's very helpful. If somebody has just got a middle finger, it's not a good day. So a 5, is there some not? You're a 10, right? Sometimes I know it's not fair. You're 6, a 10. Why are you a 10? Are you always a 10? What makes today a 10? That's nice. I don't know if I've ever been a 10. I've been a 9.5. Even on the bed, I always leave a little extra. I don't know how a 0.5 would be. That's nice. Is there any 2s today, or anybody? I didn't get to see any 3s, or wherever you are. I like to ask this question, this 1 to 10 question. Not only, everybody seems to be in a pretty good place, so you can only go down from here, which is, I like when people are lower. It makes it easier. But what's nice is, I like this question with our kids, and you're welcome, if anybody who came in here, please sit down. You're welcome to sit down, and I just end up moving around, but yeah, please feel free. So I like this question when you're talking to your kids. It's a quick hit, especially if you're texting, like, how are you on a scale of 1 to 10 today? Right? Because most of the time, or some of the time, they don't want to even talk to you. But if you're texting them and they're away, it's also really great. And sometimes I like to get just a few words, like if they're low or high, if they're on the extremes, it's nice. And even in between, just to get a few words. But it's helpful because sometimes I know when I'm in a room, and I ask this question and someone's a 2 or 3, they might not be open to me, right? When I do this, you're all, I think pretty receptive in terms of the message today. When I talked to the 8th graders, they were all over the map. Some of the seniors were sleepy, and it's understandable. And if I were to ask that question, maybe they would be like 2 or 3s. And I don't take it personally. It's more of an assessment of like, where are you? So I know what I'm working with. And this way I know I'm not horrible, because it's like if you're in a bad place, you came in here in a bad place. And I didn't put you in a bad place, but it's helpful to see that, and it's helpful to know. All right, let's see if this might be a little tricky, but if not, I'll do it by hand. Okay, so this all starts by dreaming big. That's the idea. We have these dreams for our kids, and we want our kids to live these amazing lives. And during my program today, I shared some of these slides, and I love celebrating the students in all different parts of their lives. Dreaming big, the championship, that was exciting for the tennis team. Tennis teams, they won, which is thrilling, and I love talking to them because they don't always win. People who have championship seasons, it's not like every year you're a champion. There are lots of years where you don't win. And the game of sports and being an athlete is all part of that. And then having academic success and awards and being recruited is so much fun, and it's such a long path to be recruited. But then once athletes get to that next place, what happens? And we talk about that too. When you're the new person and you're no longer the big fish in Bronxville, what happens when you are around all these exceptional people? Like, can you still thrive when your identity is wrapped up in being someone who is exceptional and has been exceptional? And I played a video today. It was so good. Was it today? Yeah. It was a video of these 2 guys I met. You could see it on my social media. I was doing some reps up a hill near where I live, and it's not like reps. I was walking upstairs. And then I walked down the stairs, and this guy who was like, he had like a 15-pack. He was super cut, and he said to me, he's like, "Good job." And I was like, all right, thank you. And then I was like, oh, wow, this guy and this other guy they're really fit. So I started talking to them, and they were both college football players. One signed with the Ravens recently. He was at Wisconsin. Another one's at University of Utah. And they were just talking about the most important thing to do is just to grind. Like, let your grind speak for you. Like, let your work speak for you. Don't go in there trying to impress anyone. Just show up and know why you're there and work. And I just love that message, where you just show up and you work. And if you show up and you work, good things are going to happen. And I talked to some of our, these were some Merit Scholar finalists, and it was great to talk to them and talk to musicians. And this isn't them, this was last year, but this is going to be them, and you'll be there. And so beautiful and so picturesque and so wonderful. And we talked about what's going to happen next. And it's this idea of the dream. Like, what's their dream? Which is important. And then you all have a dream. There's a reason you're here, and you probably moved to this community for a reason, right? Because I know this is a place where people really want to live. And they want to live here, I think, because of the schools is one of the big reasons. And then it's the question of why. Like, why is this so important? What's your dream? What's yours for your kid? Yeah, if you're comfortable answering.
Just for them to be happy.
Yeah. Does what they do, is that real important to you? And
to make them happy? No.
or like the choices they make in terms of college, career, interests?
It's important, but I just want them to be happy in whatever they choose to do.
Yeah. I mean, what more could you want? What about you in the striped sweater? Yeah.
Similar to just to be happy.
Yeah.
Something that they enjoy.
That they enjoy, right? To figure that out, which is wonderful. What about you?
Yeah, probably similar. Fulfilled, motivated.
Yeah.
Direction.
Yeah. I think those are all great, and I didn't really have an answer I was looking for. But I think it makes sense, to be happy. But then as you were talking, because I had a book called The Happiest Kid on Campus, which was a play on the happiest baby on the block, and we changed it to The Naked Roommate for Parents Only because the happiest kid on campus didn't really resonate, and some of the parents responded they didn't necessarily want their kids to be happy. Like being happy wasn't their goal as much as being balanced and being able to handle whatever comes their way, and having that ability to be resilient, which I think, and I want my kids to be happy, and when they're not happy, I'm not happy. You know, I like it when they're happy. And when they're not happy, because I do what I do, I just have to be reminded that they're gonna get better and they're gonna be happier. But you'll see it, one of the slides that comes up is that our kids are the most depressed, the most anxious. Jonathan Haidt's most recent book, talking about the anxious generation. And we want them to be, but it might even be, I just don't want them to be so anxious. You know, I just don't want them to be so overwhelmed. I just don't want them to feel so much pressure. And there's another book from Jennifer Berhaney Wallace, Never Enough. I don't know if you've seen that book. It's a wonderful book as well. And that book talks really about the toxic achievement culture. And it's a real mix. It's really difficult because on one hand we want our kids to be balanced and happy and less overwhelmed, but on the other side, it's this extreme pressure that you have to be an achiever or there's something at stake, or something will happen. And what I like to be is a calming force and say, or nothing bad will happen. But it's like nothing bad will happen. I was a 3.0 student on a good day with gym and art. Right? I failed algebra freshman year. I really struggled. I took it over the summer and I got like a 97%. That should have been a warning sign that I have ADHD, but I wasn't evaluated till a year and a half ago. Last summer I got evaluated and it was like red hot, you know? It was so clear, which was helpful because then I had some science on my side. But I was never the kid who was a high achiever. And I made sure that students knew this, and I wasn't saying it so they can have an excuse, because I think most students want to do well. I do. I think you come from places where you want to do well, and you're around people who do well, but some of them just don't fit in. And I was one of these people that just never fit in. And my parents, they were very busy doing other things while I was growing up. My dad started his business, so I would come home after school and I would take care of myself for a while because my mom worked with him. And they were very hands-off. And I just had to figure it out. They're lovely, wonderful, I love them and adore them. But I was I had to figure it out. This is the stat from Jonathan Haidt, The Anxious Generation book. And these are stats from the American College Health Association. And these are stats I've been tracking for years, and it's really wonderful to see it magnified. But this idea of 134% increase in anxiety since 2010, 106 in depression since 2010, ADHD. And as I was talking to the 8th graders, I don't know how much they really could grab onto this right now. There is this thought of you want to limit technology. That's one of the suggestions. And I don't have a problem with that suggestion. But I also think technology can be really helpful because I have a 10-year-old who loves roller coasters, who loves watching videos, and he likes engineering, and he watches extraordinary stuff that teaches me things that I never even knew I would be interested in. And then there's ways to connect. My 15-year-old has found ways to connect with, he likes soccer and started a soccer Twitter account, and he has really become an enthusiast, and he also is in the band, and he and a bunch of his friends played in the supporter section of the Chicago Fire game with he got 9 of his friends together and connected with someone in a supporter group, and it was that's all done through technology. Right? But then there's also that other part of technology, which is the horrific nightmare story. So one of the things that I propose, and I think all of this is really important, is I think it's important for our kids to have the tools to filter through the input. Because I think the input comes through so quickly, and also with the ability to understand rejection and to understand how this input relates to me and how I can process all this so I don't internalize everything. And I'll share with you one of the things that I'm just so proud of and excited about that really can help kind of damper some of this coming in and be a filter. But I think that they need to be equipped because technology is not ending and they're going to get it in so many different ways. So we really are at this crossroad of how do we as parents help? We got this huge problem. And we know persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. And we know that students are really struggling. And in the data, more of our female students are struggling. But I think so many male students are struggling and just not as vocal about it. And I've seen it. And statistically, it's not as skewed as what we saw in that CDC study. But then we have this other piece. The acceptance rates by the Ivies and elite college stayed historic lows. Oh no. Oh no. The cynical reason applications are surging. And then what's happened is we have these statistics, and these statistics are connected to the Common App. And the Common App has made it possible for students to apply to 20 schools, 25 schools. And they're only going to one school, if any of these schools, and these schools are getting all of these applications. And then they're getting all of these applications, and what are they doing with it? There's the early decision, there's the early ED, and this is fascinating. USC deferred 38,000 of their applicants. 94% of students were deferred. So for you junior families who are like, we need to do ED or early action, early decision or early action, early action, early decision are wonderful. There's nothing wrong with it. But if your kid doesn't get in, they don't get in. Then they'll get in at regular decision, right? They'll get in a regular decision. And if they don't get in at regular decision, then they'll get in somewhere else. Like they will get in somewhere else. And their life will be wonderful. And here's the rub. Have 5 dream schools. And I think dream schools most of the time are phooey. I don't like dream schools. It's like a dream school is, I find it irritating. And the reason I find it irritating is because we put so much emphasis on the school fulfilling some sort of expectation. And when a student gets rejected by their dream school, it is so powerful. I don't know if any of you have gone through this with any of your older kids. Anybody? But when they do, they're upset and it hurts and it's devastating. But then what happens is they have to ask themselves, what do I want? And why do I want this? And where can I get what I want? And they have to go through this cycle of actually exploring and giving up on that dream. But it doesn't mean giving up on dreaming. It just means giving up on that idea of a dream school and still living a dream life. But then being empowered to figure out how to get what they want. And then we got this part. I was talking to one of your teachers about this. Some colleges will soon charge $100,000 a year. And this is really interesting because, you know, there's something to be said about the market of when you have institutions that are charging $400,000 for an undergraduate degree. And then it becomes, what is the value, especially if you have a child who's going to graduate school, and even if you have the money, and it's not a big deal, the idea of spending $400,000 for something that may not have so much value that you can get at a fraction of the cost and get the same outcome, is there really that much value? And I think what's going to happen is eventually this is going to turn because schools keep charging as much as they want, as much as the market will allow. So we're the market, and at what point does the market say, this is enough, this isn't a value? And once that happens, then things will change. But I don't know if it's really worth it. You know, imagine what you can do with the other $200,000. Or if there's a graduate program, or because a student who goes to undergrad, and I'm a big fan, like in-state, I love in-state. I love schools that give merit aid. I love schools that really help support students. If a student's going to grad school, that undergraduate degree, if you go to a school that's a state school or maybe a school that's a little less competitive and you're part of an honors program, and you are part of a cohort where you have connection to faculty and you have experiences that feed your curiosity and you end up in the top 10% of your class, and then you want to go to grad school, I mean, you have a great shot, because also grad schools want to look at candidates from different states and different schools. So all of a sudden you've separated yourself as opposed to being in the 50% of a highly selective school, or even towards the bottom half, which is still exceptional and amazing. But when you look at it and what people are fighting for, what are they fighting for? And really, how much does that matter? Do you find that interesting? Like, I just find it's like, it's emotional. So much of it is emotional. And the thing is, there is value at some of these places. It all depends what's important to you. I'm not going to play this video. This is Denise Pope. I interviewed Denise Pope. She co-founder of Challenge Success. I don't know if you're are you a Challenge Success school? Yeah, and Challenge Success is great. Redefining success so that our students can know that they're enough and there are lots of different paths. And she shares that the data says where you go to school is not what determines your future. It's what you do. It's what you do. And it's feeding that curiosity and having the room to get things wrong so you can figure out what you like and don't like. It's false. Okay. Right, where you go determines your future. So I subscribe to this philosophy. I never lose, I either win or I learn. And I love this philosophy, growth mindset philosophy, that really reinforces this idea that no matter what, you're going to be okay. And if we can flex that muscle and give ourselves permission to be imperfect, we have a much better chance of getting to amazing places and becoming really strong and resilient. I'll just drop one more thing. If you have a child who has dealt with anxiety or depression or some sort of mental health challenge, it's not pleasant and it's really scary and hard, but when they get through it, the tools they have, the gift of being able to understand your brain, and when my brain does certain things, here's what I need to do, here's how I can plan, here's how I can help myself, and here's how I can help other people. I mean, that is such a gift. And if, when they were learning that, their GPA sunk a little bit, where they're no longer able to get into that place where the GPA has to be like beyond perfect, well, hallelujah. Hallelujah, good, because they'll go to a place where they can teach other people, where they could be exceptional and they could be at the top and they can exercise their emotional intelligence and all the other aspects. And for the students who struggle, or have had anxiety and have still been able to maintain that GPA, the answer is, how do you make sure you have a mental health transition plan so that you have people who are in your corner before you even need that help, so that you can be supported and make sure you have those resources. And that's something that over the summer is a great thing to do, and it's something that I highly encourage parents of seniors to really think about and have your kids think about. Okay. These are my books. I've written a bunch of books, and each book was a struggle to get done, and I didn't realize I had my ADHD. This book, this Naked Roommate for Parents Only, was torture. And I remember I was so late with the deadline. We went to Arizona to visit my parents, and I had to spend the entire trip at the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf writing. And we had really young kids, and my wife goes, "You can't let this happen again." And I said, "I promise I won't let it happen again." And I didn't let it happen again because I was super activated, because I didn't want to upset her, and it helped me to do better executive planning on the other books. But this Naked Roommate book has hit the New York Times bestseller list. There's over 1 million copies in print. The book helps because what I do is I find students who have dealt with discomfort, and then they share what they went through, and students can know that they're normal. Because so many students don't know, change is uncomfortable. You can be the best, the brightest, the most equipped, the one who's the most prepared, and it could be uncomfortable. And I know this because I experienced this. And I'll share with you that story, but this has been interesting. This isn't even updated. It's funny, it's like 570 something followers on Instagram. My social media has exploded in the past year, even year and a half. And the reason I think it's exploded is because every day I just share something to help someone feel a little less uncomfortable, to work through a problem with a parent, to work through an academic situation, to not reject themselves, to know that they're normal, to know that they're okay. Parents love forwarding this. It's a great tool for you to talk to your kids. A lot of times they'll have discussions. They'll say, "What do you think of that?" I posted something in my story today about what alcohol. It's like, I forget the name of these jugs of alcohol. What was the Gorb? What is it? Right, the Gorbs. Gourds? Right, board, right. I didn't know, and it's like, I think I'm pretty informed, but like, they're like, milk cartons of juice with electrolytes and alcohol. And it's like a mixture that someone carries around, and this is the new trend. And what's nice is I put it on my social media and said, have you seen this? And then you could talk to your kids about it. It's really interesting. And then it becomes the question of, and I'm going to do a lot of this, and if there's anything you want me to talk about, let me know. Because I read my questions. I can't get back to everyone, but I read them. I'm I'm going to talk a lot about like how careful do you need to be with alcohol. You know, just like of course, talk to a sophomore. You know, talk to someone who's there. But I get to ask these questions and people share. I asked another question of who has failed something and been able to bounce back. Just please share your story in the comments. It's tip 1131. And I love it. There's like 300 comments of people who struggled. So as a parent, understanding that a kid who's exceptional in terms of their classroom performance, that first year, or even that second year, sometimes they don't do well. I was talking to a student at the University of Miami who talked about he failed a class, or he failed an exam, an engineering exam his first semester, was devastated. Because this is a kid who identified himself by his grades. But he recognized my grades aren't my identity. And when I don't get the grade or the outcome that is a reflection of what I want to get, I get help. And I know a lot of your kids don't want to get help. They don't like to get help. They're not used to getting help. So I'm able to do this, and it's been really wonderful. People send me so many messages, and I just pulled a few of these. This one is just about a student who's really homesick, went to UW-Madison. His friends were at Indiana. They've been doing all the right things. But the thing is, you could do all the right things and still not have a close group of friends. And I really emphasize that with Bronxville students today. Because so many of them, I asked how many of you have been going to school with the same people your whole life? And so many raised their hands. I said, oh no, right? And it's not a bad thing, but it's like, oh no, you probably, a lot of you haven't really made friends recently. And making friends is a skill. You know, it's sharing experiences over time and being patient. And a lot of students aren't good at this. So you can see some of these. This one I think is great. Hi, Harlan. It's not my name. That's nice. I'm a freshman at Tufts, right? And they're at Tufts. Struggling with good grades in an intro class with 250 students. Our grades solely based on quiz grades. I suck at taking tests, studied hard for my first one. Didn't end up with the results I hoped for. Do you have any advice regarding taking tests? And I did this at another event, because I've been doing a bunch of events this week. Sometimes they overlap. And there was a student going to Tufts. I don't think it was here. It was another school. And what I did is I go on the website. And I go to the academic resource area. And I say, here are the peer tutors. Here are the academic resources. These are the places you need to go before you even get on campus. I was talking to another student today who was worried about grades, who was doing an engineering path. And I'm like, you start by going to the math center. Like, you identify it and you study there. You study there, so if there's a question or you have a problem, you walk to get help. And then if you really do it right, you work there. You work there and you get to know the teachers, you get to know the professionals, and it's the ultimate hack. Making friends. This person's struggling. It's November 2nd. That's 10 weeks. You don't find lifelong friends a lot of times in 10 weeks. It takes time. Then this student, I'm a second-year med student in the UK. I've been watching your videos for the past month and wanted to say a massive, massive thank, double massive. I didn't realize that. Thank you for everything. You completely changed my perspective on university. This is a second-year med student, which I thought was fascinating. And this one, I just found out my freshman daughter's boyfriend's been going to her college several times a week to spend the night in the dorm with her. I'm beyond mad. We paid an extra $2,000 for her to have a single, so she can play house with her boyfriend. Advice, please. So, communicating with your kid question. But this is a lack of control. It's like we don't have control. And what's the answer? To either cut them off or to try and understand why they kept it a secret and how to be safe. And to make choices in alignment with your values. And to make sure we can at least have one parent still be in their corner. Because otherwise they're going to be playing house and you're not going to have a key. And that's no good. Just living in a dorm, dealing with those changes. So these are things that come up again and again and again. And if you want to look through old videos, you're welcome to do that. I travel, I meet people, I work with first-generation students, low-income families, places where there's lots of resources, and it doesn't matter who someone is, they struggle. It is hard and it is difficult. I'm fortunate that I get to talk to lots of experts, and those experts help me to know what's normal. And my podcast is something I'm putting a lot of energy into. And the old podcasts are evergreen, so I hope you'll check that out as well. The context and the research has been over 25 years. I've been doing this for over 25 years. I wrote an advice column for over 20 years called Help Me Harlan that was syndicated in a lot of newspapers, and it's really helped me to see patterns. I'm also a dad. This is my wife, Stephanie. She's a speech language pathologist, and she's wonderful. She's also an author and works a lot supporting parents. She helps them to enter the nest, and I help them to leave the nest. And then here's Eli, and Eli's a senior. I'm so excited for him. He's graduating. Harrison loves music, and he's a sophomore, and Asher loves roller coasters. He's in 5th grade. And this is Ollie. He loves eating stuff off the counter. He's very good at getting stuff. And I'm in it. I am in it deep. And one of the lessons I've learned is when things get difficult and really hard, they're horribly difficult and hard, but they get better amazingly fast. Like the majority of time. Like that's the thing that shocks me. I don't know if any of you have been through this. Like things get bad, but then they get so much better. And our kids are better, but the bad sucks. It's so hard. It's so painful. And each of us internalize it in different ways. And high school, as wonderful as it is and as great as this place is, it does not prepare students for what's next. No school can, because what they're dealing with is transition. We focus so much on search and selection. Junior year, I know there's a lot of junior families. This is search year, selection year. It's intense. It's a lot of emotion. What's going to be the best place? I just want to make sure it's the best place. You know, every place you go to could be the best place. It really can. It's just what you make of it and how your kid can figure out how to find their way. And I think it's exciting, but there's also, this should be joyful. Like this should be joyful. Why is it stressful? Right? I don't know if anybody, and you can chime in at any time. I think it's joyful. It should be joyful because whatever happens is going to be great. And I think we can dictate that, and we can be the ones to reinforce that. Transition is the hardest part. And as a parent, you see more, you know more, you get text messages. Anybody gotten a text message from a kid since you've been in here? Have any of you probably, some of you have. Like, it's like you're tethered. And the thing is, that's not going away, but it's how do we manage that? Because you are often first responders. And if you don't know how to respond and you get too involved, they're going to call you names. And it's hard to know how involved should we be. And that's part of it. I don't like to call you names. I like to call you the most loving, caring, and supportive parents facing new and unprecedented challenges, because that's what we are. We're doing our best. And there aren't answers. We really are pioneers in many ways of having to navigate this new landscape. So if the schools don't prepare us, how do we work through this? And I've got a few suggestions, and I know we've been chatting for a while, but don't worry, it goes super fast. This is almost a lot of it is just me rehashing things that I've mentioned. Number one is you gotta get comfortable with the uncomfortable. That's just what it is. Change is uncomfortable. It is bittersweet being a parent who has a kid who's graduating, and for the juniors, you're probably starting to already get a little weepy thinking, oh my gosh, only one more time, right? I was thinking about that with my sophomore. I'm like, only 2 more times. This is no good when we're at concerts. But you're getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. So my journey started at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And I come from a very similar community. I'm from the northern suburbs in Chicago. Many of you probably have family or know people there. And I wanted to go to University of Wisconsin in Madison because it was the best school I got into. I did really well on my ACTs. So well I called the home office because I didn't think it was true. And they said, no, that's your score. And it really helped me, and I got into this great place, and I decided I was gonna go to a big school, and then I wanted to be close to my girlfriend because it was a miracle that I had one. That's not an exaggeration. I was so excited, and she was a senior in high school, and I was a freshman in college. And then I wanted to, I'll just do this by hand, and I didn't want to know people. because I was tired of looking at the same faces. I think Bronxville students are tired of looking at the same faces. They want something new. So I went to college and I met my roommate, and this was not my actual roommate, just a stock photo. But I wanted my roommate to be my friend, and I actually required my roommate to be my friend. And requiring someone to be a friend is a mistake because a roommate simply required to share space. And when you require someone to fill the role of friend, they have to invite you to do things, they have to include you, they have to be a friend. But a roommate is just someone you share space with. And I didn't know how to make friends because I didn't really think about it. I thought it would just happen. My roommate, when his parents left, he pulled out some shrubbery, some marijuana. He rolled a joint, he lit it, and he goes, "Do you want some?" And I was really nervous because I didn't get high and I didn't want to. So I said, "No thanks, man, I'm full." And he thought it was cool. I was like, all right. I was able to do that for a little bit, and then eventually he moved out because I didn't party with him. And I was devastated because he was supposed to be my friend, and I didn't have any friends. So now I had to find friends. So I tried to rush a fraternity. Both my brothers were in a fraternity. My dad was in a fraternity. I rushed 3 fraternities, and I got rejected by every single one. And the people I was hanging out with would no longer hang out with me because they were pledges. So I didn't really have any friends and didn't know how to find friends because I didn't really have a plan. And I made it really clear, and this is so important for every student in middle school, grade school, where can you find a place where you are welcome and included simply because you exist? Where you show up and they go, "Harlan," right? Simply because you exist. Spiritual groups, volunteer groups, living and learning communities, certain cohorts of people where you just are welcomed and included. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that students make, is they depend on a group or organization to be their social connection, and that group or org is one where you have to be recruited or audition or be invited. And they're set up for disaster because they have one plan. And the answer is you need to have 3 places. 3 places. 3 places where you sweat, play, pray, live, learn, lead, love, work. Sweat, play, pray, live, learn, lead, love, work. You have to have your 3 places. And at any campus, there are at least 2 places, let's say, probably 3, 30. There are lots of places. I was at the University of Miami the other day. I was doing a YPO event across the street, and I just happened to be at the University of Miami. And I was really excited because when I'm near a university, I have to walk around. And I talked to all these students, and I met Jacob. And Jacob was graduating, and Jacob was in his gown, and he had his debate logo on his stall. Oh, I got it right. That word stall trips me up. He had his logo on the stall, and he was talking about debate at Miami. And he said, "You don't have to try out. Anyone can show up." I was like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." And then I met these 2 girls who were having a picnic. And they were talked about how they met each other at the Marine Mammal Rescue Club. And it's a club where anyone can join. And that's how they became friends. And the other girl, also is a leader in spiritual groups. And these are 3 places. So like right off the bat, 3 places. And students who are going to really highly selective schools, the trend has been you don't have access to the majority of groups and orgs when you show up. It's really frustrating, whether it's an eating club or it's a business organization. So I encourage them. It's a great thing to just encourage them. Where can you go? Even if it's a place that you don't love, you go there for a little bit, just to have community. I didn't know this. I struggled. I got really sad. I got really anxious. The only thing I had going for me was Alexis. This was my girlfriend at the time. And if you remember the picture of my family and the car, Alexis wasn't in the car. Okay. He didn't make the car. Okay. So this was prom, and I was really excited, and she was wonderful. And when I was a senior, she was a junior, and then when I was a freshman, man, I struggled. I leaned on her and leaned and leaned and leaned till eventually her father compared our relationship to a dying puppy. And he told Alexis it was time to end things and she needed to shoot the puppy. And she shared the metaphor with me. and it was really upsetting. I was devastated because I was alone. And I was on this amazing campus. This is what it looked like when I toured. This is what it looked like when I moved in. And this is what it looked like when I walked to class. So this is what they sold me. And this was the experience. And it was hard. I did well in the classroom. I actually liked the classroom because it was the only place where I had a clearly defined role, where I knew what I was supposed to do. And another hack is define your role. Wherever you are in life, if you have a role, you have something to say, you have something to do, and you have somewhere to go. I think part-time jobs, working 5 hours, 10 hours, I think it doesn't matter where your kid is, college, high school, middle school, grade school, that grade school can work. No, they don't have to work. But this idea of having a role, and it can be a role, doing chores could be your role. Because when you have a role, you have a function. And when you have that function, you don't have to internalize it and make it emotional because someone is telling you to do something. And when someone tells you, it's a different situation. These are the 5 big areas where students struggle. I felt like a failure. I was so anxious. And here's another thing. I'm blessed. I come from a place of privilege. I understand this. My parents paid for college. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. And by the time I came around, my dad's business was really thriving. There weren't a lot of challenges in terms of that. And I had options. And the thing is, I had these options and I was at the school that was amazing. And I was struggling so deeply. And I felt such terrible shame because there were all these students from all these different places who were struggling. And here I was struggling for no reason. For no reason. Like, I must be so flawed. I must be so messed up. I must be so defective because I can't do this. And it was this weird thing. And I mentioned that again today just because it's like, it doesn't matter how much or how little or where we're from. When we navigate change, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. And if you don't know it's uncomfortable, it hurts. But when you know it's comfortable, when you know what to expect, it's much easier. I ended up transferring to the Indiana University from UW. I went to Indiana University. And the reason I transferred to Indiana is because I had friends there. Remember I said I was sick of seeing the same faces? I needed the same faces. I needed familiarity. And then I had brothers who had gone to IU. So I'd visited there since I was 10 because I'm the youngest of 3. And there was a fraternity that had to accept me because I was a legacy. So I had a place. And I was okay with that. It was still hard. It was still uncomfortable. I didn't like some of the fraternity hazing. It really upset me. I pushed through because I didn't want to have a second bad year. And I found my people through the Indiana Daily Student, through the fraternity. I found my places, and I was able to be patient. And this first year is an exercise in people, places, patience. That's an exercise in any change. If you have a parent who's aging, who's going through change, who are their people? Where are their places? It takes time to work through change. It's really remarkable. It seems so simple, the language, but it's really powerful. It's what do I want? What makes me uncomfortable? People, places, patience. That's the formula. And when we don't have our people and places, and when we don't understand change and transition, it really throws us. The 5 areas of transition are social, emotional, physical, financial, and academic. And academic is purposefully at the end, because to spell SEPFA, you really need the A at the end, right? It wouldn't work better anyway. No, SEPFA is a stupid acronym. It's the worst acronym. It's another bad acronym. But it really represents the 5 big transitions. And for our junior families and sophomore families, and I was talking to a student who was struggling between 2 schools, I said, hey, remember SEPFA? So remember SEPFA? Okay. So what you need to do is pick the top 2 areas that are really important to you. Is it social? Is it physical? Or is it academic? And then I want you to break it down into people and places. And I want you to really look at the people. I want you to talk to the people. I want you to identify the places at each school where you're going to do the thing that you really want to do. And I bet if you do this, and you talk to the people and the places, and you tell the story of your year, which is another technique, I think you're going to figure out which one's going to be a better choice. And if you don't, you flip a coin, and you say, I'm going to go there for a year and see how it feels, and have my best experience. and then you move on. But this is a great framework. The problem with this whole college thing is we start with the school and the rankings and the scarcity, as opposed to starting with what do I want and what are the areas that are most important to me. Because when we do this, we set ourselves up to thrive. And then as we continue through life and we navigate all the different changes, we see it's social, emotional, physical, financial, and professional once you graduate. Sepfapa, all right? It gets better, sepfapa. But if you look at what COVID did is it shook everything up overnight. The social, emotional, physical, financial, professional, and academic. It was an unwanted occurrence where we didn't know what to expect, and we were all thrown into a tailspin. But the predictability part is, okay, when I'm on unsteady ground, how do I find some direction and how do I make the unknown a little less intimidating? And it's, okay, what do I want? What makes me uncomfortable? People, places, patience. And we can recalibrate and we can find steady ground. And it really works. It's really, there are unwanted things that happen in our life and there are things that we expect to happen. And oftentimes it's the unwanted things that cause us the biggest challenges. The way I like to describe it is, life is really about expectations. You know, we enter a new situation, any situation, with expectations. And we came here today, and we expected the door to be open at a certain time, which was wonderful and fine, but it's like, I didn't panic, and you didn't panic. It's because it's just what it is. It's like, because you know what? I know it's going to be okay no matter what. And I was ready to do this under the tree outside. I was like, okay, we'll do it there if we don't get in. I was serious. Like, I would have done it under the tree. I don't care. Doesn't matter. But it's expectations. And every day we wake up, we expect to get to work at a certain time. We expect the bus to come at a certain time. We expect things to happen. And when expectations and reality don't align, there's a problem. Right? This area is called the problem. And when students have expectations or parents have expectations and those expectations are unmet, there's a problem. So the question is, how do we work through the problem? And the answer is, well, instead of abandoning expectations, what we can do is extend the timeline. We could extend what we need in many situations and think, okay, what makes me uncomfortable? People, places, patience. People, places, patience. People, places, patience. And we take steps in a direction we want to go, and we can reach those expectations or exceed those expectations. But too many times when we don't get what we want and we get so angry and upset, we don't get anywhere. And when you have expectations and your kids can't meet your expectations and my kids can't meet my expectations, it's really annoying because I want to yell at them and get frustrated. But then I have to say, hey, I'm just curious. Why? You know, why? What's going on? Because sometimes the why can explain there's something going on that we didn't know. I was talking to another parent whose kid was late coming home. And she said, you know, in the past I'd be very impatient because the expectation is they have to be here at a certain time. And she said, I kind of just took a breath and I found out that they found out that their child was having a panic attack and couldn't drive home and was late and was so upset. And the mom said, I'm so happy that I asked why. And it's this thing of the why and trying to understand so that when our expectations aren't in alignment with what's happening, to try and get the reason to understand. And then even in that situation, like connecting it to people, places, patience, it's, okay, instead of making this about me being upset or your curfew, what happened, right? What happened? And then it's, who are the people who can help you when you feel those feelings? Where are the places you can go so you can start practicing? So if this happens again, you can work through it. And then how long will it take so that you can get comfortable? But it starts with when those expectations aren't met, what do we do? I think that our lives are based on expectations not being met and us having to either react in an emotional way or respond. But if we don't have a framework, we don't have a lot of places to go. And we tend to attack other people or we will attack ourselves. At the core of discomfort, if there's anything I can give you tonight, is the universal rejection truth. The universal rejection truth, I think, is one of the most important laws of the universe. It's an irrefutable law that says not everyone and everything will always respond to us the way we always want. I look at it like the flux capacitor in Back to the Future. It is the key to time travel, and it is the key to processing uncomfortable situations. Because when something happens that I don't want, I need to ask myself the question, is it me? Is it someone or something else? Or is it the universal rejection truth? Or is it a combination of them all? But if I don't know about the universal rejection truth, when something doesn't go my way or something is unexpected, then I get very upset. I get very upset. The universal rejection truth of dating and relationships. You could be the best, the brightest, the most desirable, and not everyone's always going to respond the way you want. You could have a wonderful relationship. Some of you might be in a second marriage. You might be working through whatever challenge. The universal rejection truth is not all marriages are going to turn out to be exactly the way we want. Not all relationships will. And it could still be a wonderful relationship. And sometimes people are just flawed and imperfect, or something happens in someone's life and you could do everything right and it won't always turn out as planned. And the beauty of the universal rejection truth is it allows a gateway to be okay and to find closure in situations where things aren't perfect. Because the world's not perfect. And the universal rejection truth says your kid is your kid. And who you thought your kid is going to be and what path your kid is going to take, we don't really know. But if we know they're going to be okay no matter what, it makes it easier. So the universal rejection truth is so powerful. A lot of times we reject ourselves. Imperfection, perfectionists. I love this truth. When you embrace the truth, instead of fighting uncomfortable and hating, hide, and attacking, you can work through it. But we know so many kids, when they don't get what they want, they hate, hide, or attack. I'm sure you have kids that do this. I think so much of social anxiety is I have expectations, and I'm afraid that someone's not going to respond the way I want, so I don't take a risk and put myself out there. But if I can embrace the universal rejection truth and understand my role as a student, it becomes much easier to take risks because there isn't as much at stake. People who fight the uncomfortable struggle. When you face the uncomfortable, you can work through it. You can ask yourself the question, is it me, is it something else, or is it the truth? You can adopt this win or learn mindset. And if you don't know about uncomfortable, the universal rejection truth of the first year of college, of anything, it's uncomfortable, it's unpredictable. Some schools throw out first semester grades. It's a new trend because they're not a reflection of a student's true ability, because one student might have had that course and it's all they're learning it again, and the other student doesn't know because they haven't had that course. When we do not know what's coming, we struggle. We're much more vulnerable to struggling. So practice uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is not an emergency. It's just part of life. So you can ask your kids when they're dealing with things, what transition makes you the most uncomfortable? Which one makes you the most excited? All right, I'm going to fly through the rest. I want to ask real quickly, does anyone have any questions? Because I've talked way too, I'm a yabber. Yeah.
I know you spoke actually to two of my kids today, and they both raved about it.
Oh, thank you.
Just so you know, and they said that from all the speakers that have ever come into the school, you were the most impactful.
Wow, the 8th grader too?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. It's very kind.
But I was curious if you could share with us what you spoke with the graduating seniors about. Was it similar to this? And did you have any takeaways to share with us about your conversation?
Well, we talked for 2 hours. So and I wasn't planning on that. That was rough. But it wasn't rough. It was great. I went in there, I'm like, I'll probably hit an hour and a half and leave and let them go. But they had questions, and they were really engaged, and they were open to asking these questions. A lot of what I'm talking about here is what I talked to them about. So you're really on the same page.
I'm glad, 'cause
Yeah.
I think I have older kids who have gone to college, and I wish they had seen this, because I think it is so important.
Yeah, and I'm grateful I get to share it, and thank you for, I just, I've been living this, and I've seen it, and it's so upsetting that there are so many families and kids who are so thrown because of all these things. Like, we know 2/3 of students deal with this every year, and then sometimes it's sophomore year, junior year, senior year. But basically, I shared this, and it was more of talking to the students. It was a little more of talking to them about, who are you? Who are you sitting next to? How did you become friends? How do you know each other? How do you plan on making friends? I talked a lot about advocating for yourself, because I think advocating in an environment like Bronxville is very different than being in a community, especially that student at Tufts. I believe that there was a student going to Tufts who we talked about that exact situation. And the fear of talking to a professor. And I walked through that. So when you talk to a professor, your job's not to know. Like, that is your job not to know, because you're a student, right? Are you supposed to know? No. And if you know your role is to not know, then when you talk to a teacher at a school where there's reputations and tenure and, sometimes unkind people, if you're really grounded in your role is, I don't know, and I'm interested, and I have a boundless curiosity, right? So that's what it is. I'm a student who doesn't know, who's curious. Right? So I'm going to talk to the teacher. And then another student's like, I don't know if I'll do that. I'll probably talk to the TA. And I said, then that's great. You could talk to the TA. But when you need a letter of recommendation, and this is a student going to flight school, or wants to be a pilot, I think that's who it was. And I said, and you want a letter of recommendation, the TA will write it for you then, right? Right? I said, or maybe you can talk to the professor and you can ask questions about the things you're so unbelievably passionate and excited about. And you can ask if you could observe something, if there's something happening in a lab or something happening live on an airport, whatever. You could do that. And then all of a sudden, you could have this relationship so that when you need that letter of recommendation, you could say, hey, I wanted to get this internship. Can you write a letter of recommendation? Absolutely. Right? So it's that idea, and I do this so many times through social media, of having that advocacy. And then a student who, I was at another school in Tampa, and the parent was really worried about their kid advocating, their daughter advocating for themselves. And I saw the parent the night before, and then the daughter I saw at the event. And it was really interesting, because the daughter said, I'm really anxious socially, which is a very bold thing to say in front of a group, and I'm worried I'm not going to be able to talk to my professors. So then the answer was, if you know you have some anxiety, well, then that's great. Because now you can have a therapist on campus who's going to help you. Maybe you have a friend that helps you to ask those questions. Maybe you have a job that puts you in an office with these people, so you have a function, so you're forced to interact, so they get to know you. So instead of it being your social anxiety that takes over, you could still be in a role where you have things to say, and now you can start to build that relationship and find ways to work through it, which could be strategies you could use throughout your life. So it became this wonderful conversation. But those are the things we talked about. And so much of what I'm sharing here is really foundational, because the universal rejection truth in any situation is, if you go to your professor is an a-hole, that person was an a-hole before you walked in the room, right? The universal rejection truth of having professors is some of them are a-holes, right? And they're not student advocates right now. Maybe at one point they were, but you give them a chance. You give them a chance. And if they're an a-hole, then you can talk to the other professor and go, hey, I talked to the other professor. He wasn't very kind. Do you have any tips for me? And they can say, oh yeah, he's a real a-hole. I'll help you out. But it's like that interaction. But then there's the student who's like, oh, that person is such an a-hole. I can't be in that class anymore. This person's awful. They're ruining my education. And the answer is, these are people you're going to encounter in your life. You're going to have managers, you're going to have coworkers, you're going to be surrounded by miserable people who are going to make your life difficult. So congratulations, right? You all know, you've been around, right? And so, but it's unfortunate when you're paying thousands of dollars for someone to do it to you as opposed to getting the money. That feels better. But then it's the universal rejection truth. So you find workarounds, right? You find workarounds, but it starts with that baseline of the universal rejection truth, which I think is really a doorway. Because then instead of focusing on how terrible someone is or all the things you could do, it's this is part of it, right? And the 10% BS can take up 100% of our time if we fight it. But if we accept it and we're like, okay, this is part of it, then we can start to find solutions. And that's really what the collaborative part of this, of being with the students during the day, being with you, and the continuation, because nothing's going to solve itself right away, but I think these tools are they're so easy to use, and they're really practical and useful. And these, I'll get through this really fast. Don't panic. Think people, places, patience. It's this formula of who are your 5 people, where are your 3 places, and how long will it take? Give it a couple semesters. And as parents here who are part of this community, if any of you have children who are leaving, and are any of you going to be empty nesters coming up? Any empty nesters in the house? And only 1 or 2. But this community is so close-knit that where are your people? And where are your places if your kids leave? If you have a kid who's an athlete and really involved. I mean, I go to a lot of events. Where are your places? And I think the challenge for parents a lot of times is you have a parallel experience. What do you want to create, change your experience? What do you want to do that excites you? So instead of focusing on your kid, you get to focus on you. And then together you can both work through the discomfort and find your people and places. Places are where you sweat, play, pray, live, learn, lead, love, and work. I mentioned it before. And we need our places. They're so important. Places help us to find connection. When it comes to places, the services, the resources, the therapy. If you have a child who already is a therapist and they're going out of state, can they continue to have that relationship? If you have a child who's going through something, just start practicing. Just talk to someone. It's a wonderful thing. Why 3 places, always somewhere to go, always something to do? You always have options. And when you have places, you have power, because sometimes you're in a place where people are doing dumb things or dangerous things. And if you only have 1 group of friends and 1 place to go, you might start doing dumb and dangerous things. But when you have somewhere else to go and something else to do, you can set boundaries and you could say no thank you, and you can be okay. Students struggle with this, finding your people. I like these experiences. You have a lot of trips on the website that students have gone on. I think going on trips is wonderful. The summer programs, going abroad, having these immersive experiences, those help. These are engineers who are super friendly. I want to capture this. They're great. I love these guys. But finding the friendliest people. I encourage students, find the kindest people, not the coolest people. There are 3 types of people you want to look for. People who volunteer, you see them all around, people who you ask, and people who are paid. And these are some of these people. And when a student's looking at a school, I like to look at it in terms of what school is a school where you can find your people and find your places. And when a student talks about, oh, that school had a good feel. Well, it had a good feel because there was someone probably there and some place where they felt a connection. Because it comes down to the people, places, and patience. And there are so many wonderful people. It takes time to find your way. This is spring at the University of Michigan after a winter. And things got better. And the student was kind enough to let me take her picture. And we talked about college, and I explained what I do. And she mentioned it could take time. It's a couple semesters. It could take a year, a couple years. When students graduate, the first year after college is brutal. It's easy to sometimes get to do something, but to then hold on to it and live it and work through it is really hard. I was doing an event at Cliff & Company, and I took a picture of this poster because I loved it so much. In 1990, my son turned 33 and moved into a garage. He didn't have a regular job. Oh, sure, he had time to race his bike and rock climb and play that trumpet in jazz bars until who knows when. And you can be sure nothing got in the way of those countless treks. Places I've never heard of. We've had our moments through the years, but all of this really gets a father wondering. Then he names Cliff Bar after me. I worry too much. Cliff Erickson. And I just love that. I just love it because there's like this race. You know, it's what other people are doing. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And my wife and I have really locked into this because we come from a very similar environment. And the pace, it doesn't matter. Your kids are going to be great. And the more, I got a lot of Cliff Bars. That was really fun. Okay, number 3 is their struggles belong to them and their victories belong to you. Tongue in cheek. But really let them struggle down the hall so they can be great at struggling across the country. And then you see these articles about parents robbing their kids of adulthood, and this has been going on for years, and we can swoop in and we can solve their problems, but they really need to work through the struggle. There was a student who wrote to me who was cut from his senior year soccer team, really devastated. Soccer was his thing. He said he didn't know why. I said, okay, this happens, the universal rejection truth, right? We don't know why. Talk to your coach and explain that you really want to be part of the team and you don't know if you did something. You're not sure what happened, but whatever it is, you're willing to learn and you're willing to work on it. So he did this, and the coach gave him feedback. And he said, thank you, because the way that you approach someone, even when there's something uncomfortable, is you start with gratitude, you share what you need, and then you finish with gratitude. And this coach remembered this, and about 3 weeks later, a couple kids got sick, and the coach called that student who he cut and invited him back to be part of the varsity team. And it was this thing of when things go bad, how can you embrace and learn? Telling your story. Storytelling is so powerful. I had students tell their story, the 8th graders tell their story, their high school story. And the way you tell your story is you leapfrog into the future. And I had the high school students, your seniors, do this. It's December 31st, 2024. I had the most incredible semester. I reached my goal and accomplished what? This is that want muscle. The most uncomfortable part was this. I got through it by leaning on these people, and I found people to help me in these places, and it took me this amount of time. And you can tell that story. What's your story as a parent? What are your kids' stories? What are your 8th graders' stories? And when they tell these stories, the stories of their week, the stories of their month, you can also do this in business. I tell the story. I love telling the story of the week, especially when I have a big anxious week, because I get super anxious. I got my stuff. Get to see my therapist tomorrow. He just confirmed. I said, hey, Matt, when am I seeing you again? He goes, tomorrow. She'll be great. But I tell this story. And I was telling another student, I said, when you know that you get anxious and when you know you have these things that concern you, this one student talked about how he always wants to be perfect. I'm like, when your brain goes into that mode and you could say, oh, my brain's doing that thing again. I go, you don't have to be it. You can be above the water instead of getting swallowed up by that wave of having to be something. And you could go, oh, my brain's doing that thing again. And when it's my brain, that fleshy thing in my skull, it's not really me. It's just my brain doing that thing, which helps me to be able to have perspective and be an observer. In the book Win or Learn, we have this template. And then it's easier to create a life you love when you have 3 places, 5 people, and patience. I wanted to make this black and white because I feel like it's a picture that could be from like the 1920s. It's like so perfect, these students. I love it. But when you have this set up and the dynamics in place, it becomes so much easier to work through these challenges. And when something comes up, give it 24 hours. The 24-hour rule says you get to take a break. Give your kids a chance to process. And then what's going to happen over that 24 hours is nothing. The problem will still be there. Or there'll be a solution. They solved it, which is great. Or the old problem will no longer be a problem because new and exciting other problems will pop out. Which that happens all the time. But that 24 hours is gold. It is gold, especially when there's something heated that happens. And you get that text, you get that message. And unless it's dangerous, just let it sit. I let things sit. It's really powerful. I don't send the email. I don't even write it in the email program. I write it in somewhere else, and then 24 hours later I say, do I need to send this? And it's never the same. It's never the same. Practice asking, what do you think you should do? This is rule number 5. And give them time to answer, even if you know. And that simple exercise is so helpful. And the question of, are you looking to vent or do you want advice, is so helpful too, because sometimes they don't want to hear your voice. They just want to dump all of their problems on you. And Lisa D'Amour talks about this, how there are kids who will just transfer all their problems on you, and then they'll feel better. Right? And then you get to hold on. And depending on which parent you are, you can hand the phone over or decide who's going to get dumped on. But if they're looking for advice, you can think, where are the places to get help? Who are the people who can help you? And how long will it take? If you have a child who has learning differences, working with the school, going to the Office of Students with Disabilities or Accessibility, whatever it is, and having them go and having them build those relationships so that they can start to find their people and places and understand how that works. So get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Don't panic. Think people, places, patience. Struggles belong to them. Apply the 24-hour rule, asking what do you think you should do. And this framework's really helpful when things get really intense. And I think having frameworks really work because they give us certainty in uncertain times. These are some books I highly recommend, people I really enjoy. The book Never Enough is fantastic. I listen to audiobooks because I struggle reading. I listen to the book, and if I like it, I buy the book so I can pull different parts. Frank Bruni's book, Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be, really exemplifies this idea that you can go to lots of schools and get to lots of places. Jeff Salingo is doing amazing work. Who Gets In and Why? Ethan Sawyer on the college essay, I'm a big fan of his work, and then Grown and Flown. I've got my books, which are helpful. I'm writing a new parent book, and I'm writing a book, Win or Learn for Teens, because I really want to give them that equipment to work through all of that feedback and input. And then this, if you enjoy this, for the parents of seniors especially, I have a program called Best First Year. And I do coaching. I do weekly coaching in the fall, and I do coaching every other week in the spring. And the reason I do this is I walk hand in hand with you so that you have resources that you can point your student to, or resources that you can use. And I'm also working to build a community around Best First Year. So this is new, and you can find that through the website. Maybe you can send a message. This thing I'm dedicating so much time and energy to because schools can't do it, high schools can't do it, colleges can't do it, and I want to provide a resource that's available that can be there to really reinforce what it is we're talking about in a timely way. So I encourage you to check that out. And you can follow me, and there's a link to all my resources here on this QR code, and if your phone doesn't work, you can grab a picture of it. And I'm going to continue to do this. You know, I got a 10-year-old, so I got 8 more years at least in this game. Maybe 8 or 9 years, right? So I'm going to be there for the middle school families. We're there together. I know I pushed this. I think we slotted an hour and a half. But if anyone has any questions, I can answer a couple. Then you can stick around, and I'm happy to visit with you. Does anyone have a question that they want to ask before we leave? And you're welcome to visit with me. I think I addressed a lot. Wonderful. Well, I hope this has been helpful. And I'm grateful to be here. So thank you for having me. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks. Okay. Oh, I'm great. I'm terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.